what gritty people do is they have a mindset of, I'm going to get into each one of these 5 accounts and I'm going to land them as a customer. No matter what, I'm getting in. And if I can't get in through the front door, I'm going in through the back door. If I can't get in through the back door, I'm going through the kitchen window. If I'm not, that's not going to work. I'm going through the chimney. Like, I am getting in and they're going to be our customer no matter what. I just think there's a lot of salespeople that have that attitude. And it turns out they end up being really successful.
Welcome to another episode of the Elite Selling Podcast. We are your hosts, Frankie and Griffin. Today we've got a great guest for you. We've got Mark Wayland, Chief Revenue Officer at Box. Mark is the former Chief Revenue Officer at Tanium. He spent 10 years in different sales leadership roles at Salesforce. And today we're talking to Mark about why now is the best time to be in sales. We're going to get Mark's definition of an elite seller right off the bat. And we'll also get his unique perspective on AI, how to stand out with buyers, how to create demand in sales cycles, and establish trust. If you are liking this podcast, do Frankie and me a huge favor. Hit that 5-star button. It would mean the world to me and Frankie. It would mean that we get to bring more great guests like Mark on the podcast. Without further ado, here is Mark. Mark, welcome to the Elite Selling Podcast. We are happy to have you on.
I feel honored to be on here. This is an elite moment.
Absolutely. It's been a long time
we're in trouble
coming.
now.
Yeah, exactly.
The bar is high.
The bar is set. I love it. Well, we're excited to jump into today's topic. We'd love your hot take, and we're going to jump into it around why you feel like now is the best time to be in sales, even if it feels harder than ever. But before we jump in, we're switching things up today. On the Elite Selling Podcast, we want to start and actually get your hot take on how you define an elite seller. Let's start there, and then we can jump right in.
Yeah, so sort of maybe a 2-part response there. The first part would be, an elite seller is one that performs in every environment, right? That you can take an elite seller in different economic conditions. They can work in different companies and startups and established companies. They can work with like market-leading products where the market's coming to them, and they can work in competitive environments where maybe the market is commoditized and it doesn't matter what environment you put them in, they're going to do well. That would be like a definition of elite. And then for me, the attributes that that would allow someone to perform at that level in any condition with all the headwinds that markets can bring. The 2 most important traits that I've found over the course of my career, and this is across multiple companies, these are always the traits that I believe make the difference, are grit and business acumen. It's the combination of those 2 that is the killer combination. And the grit one, I came across from reading Angela Duckworth's book. I'm sure you all have read it. I think she spoke at more sales kickoffs during the pandemic over Zoom than just about anyone. But I discovered her book, maybe 15 years ago-ish. It was the year that the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl for the first time, and Pete Carroll was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and I read this lengthy article about him. I'm a big John Wooden guy. I'm just a huge fan. I think in here somewhere is the pyramid of success behind me. You can't quite see it, but separate from whether or not you're into college basketball or not, he's, I think, the greatest coach of all time and has incredible lessons in his writings about life and not just sports. And Pete Carroll was a big disciple of John Wooden's, and so I'm reading this article and he's talking about John Wooden, so I'm just predisposed to like everything he's going to say. And then he starts talking about Angela Duckworth, and she wrote this book, and he had her come speak to the team. And as it turns out, she did all this research on grit, and which she defines as the passion and perseverance for long-term goals. And it really changed the way that I started interviewing salespeople and sales leaders. I used to interview people for their wins. Like take me through all your times to President's Club and take me through the anatomy of one of your big deals. And then I ended up hiring a lot of people that I got a lot of false positives on. And then when you put them in a tough environment, they kind of emotionally folded up their tents. So I switched my interviewing style to interview for grit characteristics. Basically, when I interview people now, I want to find out about the most pain and suffering they've been through personally or professionally. I want to find out when you come and work on our team and it's really, really hard because of the competition or because we cut the territories tight or whatever creates hard in a job. I want to find out, what are you going to do? Are you going to be like, this is hard, it's not what I thought it was going to be, and quit and go to try to find something that's easier? Or are you going to, are you going to bear down and make it happen? And that's what gritty people do. No matter what, they're going to find a way to be successful. And then when you pair that with business acumen, which is, that deep understanding of what the root problem is the customer's trying to solve, you have to have curiosity to go dig in and find it. But the other thing that is a prerequisite to having high levels of business acumen is you have to be smart. If you're dumb, you're just not going to be able to develop business acumen.
Sorry,
And,
Frankie.
For good reason, we have laws against, interviewing on intelligence, or else we would just give people IQ tests and then you could hire based on that. But in our country, that's unfair to the dumb people. So you can't do that. But you can interview people for business acumen, which is a little bit of a cheat to find out if they're smart or not. And if they have those two things, then they can, generally be very, very successful. And that was true when I was at Salesforce. That's been true here at Box. Like the very best sellers, really gritty, and they're really, really high on business acumen.
That's good. Let's talk about grit a little bit more. So are you born with grit, or is this something that you can develop over time, or is it a little combo of both?
I love this question. Okay, so when I first discovered the grit thing from Angela and I read her book, what I found is like this is the thing that I've been interviewing and testing for years. And it's when people say sales DNA, that someone has sales DNA, I never like that phrase because if I can't test it, I don't, how do I go find it? Is it like a sense thing? I meet you and I feel like you have sales DNA. But as it turns out, people that have sales DNA are really gritty. And I did believe that it is something that people are born with or not. And in fact, some people are born with it and some people are not born with it. But what I learned from Angela Duckworth is that it can be learned and it can be developed. So if you have none of it, it can be developed in you. If you have a medium amount of it or a high amount of grit, it can be enhanced and strengthened. But it is actually something that can be developed.
How do you develop it then?
Well, I mean, you have to have Angela Duckworth on the Elite podcast for that. She's the master of it.
I thought you were a big fan.
Give us what help us get there.
Come on.
In my experience, I think a lot of it is like having conversations with people about what grit is. Like, I think that doing some self-examination on how strong you are is important. It's connected to this concept of EQ versus IQ, so emotional quotient. And if you've read the research on EQ, there's 3 components to it. So you have to have empathy, and this is why really good sellers have high EQ as well. But a lot of the attributes of EQ show up in business acumen, and they show up in grit. But so you have to have empathy, which is really good in sales, to have empathy for your customers. You have to be self-aware. You can't have high emotional intelligence if you don't understand who you are. And so if you have conversations with people that have a decent level of self-awareness, they have a high EQ, and you have a conversation with them about grit, then they're forced to examine whether or not they're gritty or not. And when they look in the mirror and they realize that maybe they could be stronger on grit, then they will lean in to go develop it. Or when they're faced with adversity, they'll be like, well, I just talked to my manager about grit. Like, I can't quit now, because then that's going to, I'm going to be validating for her that I lack it. And I'm going to have to look in the mirror with myself and admit that I lack it. So I think there's a self-awareness thing that helps develop it. And then the third component of EQ is emotion regulation. So you have to be empathetic, you have to be self-aware, and you have to have a handle on your own emotions. That's a very good thing to have in sales as well. So I think if you with a decent amount of EQ, self-awareness, emotion regulation, empathy, some self-examination on where you are on the grit scale, going and taking Angela's grit test, which you can take on our website for free, find out what your score is. If it's not where you think it should be, you know what you got to go work on.
Love that. Love the breakdown of the emotional intelligence pieces and the strengths that great sellers have. I'm curious if, and you mentioned, you're interviewing folks and you switch up your interview style. It doesn't even need to have to be in an interview, but do you have examples, or maybe one specific example, during an interview process, or someone on your team, or maybe even you in your personal life, where you saw a good example or good demonstration of grit? Of like, man, that story that was just told, or that situation you just explained, that shows to me that you've got some grit. I'm curious if there's any specific examples or something you look out for.
I mean, over the course of my career, I have worked with armies of gritty people. And I think, like, just think about you take over a new territory and a new patch and you have no pipeline. And, we've all been in that situation. And you got to go dig it out. And let's say you're like in a large enterprise patch where you have, a small number of accounts and there's no inbound leads. Like just to the most brutal environment, you have 5 prospects, Fortune 500 companies, and you're on the outside looking in. So non-gritty people will, do some research, they'll do some custom outreach, and they'll get nothing. And then they'll be like, this isn't a good patch, or, this product doesn't have good product market fit, and they'll leave. But what gritty people do is they have a mindset of, I'm going to get into each one of these 5 accounts and I'm going to land them as a customer. Like, no matter what, I'm getting in. And if I can't get in through the front door, I'm going in through the back door. If I can't get in through the back door, I'm going through the kitchen window. If I'm not, that's not going to work. I'm going through the chimney. Like, I am getting in, and they're going to be our customer no matter what. And I just think there's a lot of salespeople that have that attitude. And it turns out they end up being really successable.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't get 5 out of 5, but they'll probably get 2 out of 5, or they'll get 3 out of 5, but they're going to get in. And, I think when I was an individual contributor years ago, I had a job like that where I had 10 extra large enterprise accounts that were all prospects. And what my boss told me to do is you have to get to all 10 CIOs. This is when I was at Gartner a long time ago. So with that business card, it's a little easier to get in, but these were big companies that had said no to Gartner for a long time. They were all non-customers. And so I had this idea that I went to the Mont Blanc store in downtown San Francisco, and I bought 10 Mont Blanc pens. They were $200 each with my own money. I had the caps on the pens engraved with the CIO's name on them. And then I sent really customized letters that I FedExed with just the cap with their name engraved on it. And I said, I'll give you the other half of the pen when we meet.
Oh, let's go. That's such a good idea.
I got 9 meetings, 9 out of 10. Only one CIO wouldn't take the meeting. And the CIO of Chevron Texaco at the time, he's well retired now. This is over 20 years ago. His name was Dave Clements. I took him out. We ended up meeting for lunch at this steakhouse in Walnut Creek. And when we sat down, I said, why'd you take the meeting? And he said, I had to know who had the you-know-whats to send me half of a pen.
That's such a good idea.
And we end up doing business together.
Legend.
So I just think, I don't know that would work all the time. And I don't even know today if it would work. But I know, I was going to get in with these 9 CIOs no matter what. Or 10. And I went, 9 for 10. I think we ended up transacting with 5 of them in some way or another.
That's such a good point, though, of I think the power of focus and the power of having your back against the wall and there's no other option but success. I think in today's world, there's just too many different areas that you can just pull the ripcord and leave and exit and do something differently. But when you make up your mind that you have to be successful or else, you're going to find a way and get creative.
Yep. And in software sales, there are always other options. So that's the problem, is that if you're working somewhere where it's hard and then you're reading the news, just think about this moment that we're in right now. Databricks just did a raise at $100 billion valuation, and Anthropic is growing like crazy, and OpenAI. There's all these companies that are so hot with valuations that we've never seen before. So if you're in a job that's hard, to your point, Frankie, are you going to be back against the world? I'm going to be successful no matter what. Or are you going to be like, this is too hard, I'm going to go to, one of those companies where from the outside, it seems like it's going to be easier.
Yeah. One of the CRO, Garrett from Brex that we interviewed a couple podcasts ago, he talked about this. He said he's looking for people that are willing to take on the hard challenges, right? It's one thing for you as a CRO to see a successful segment in your business. Okay, that's running, but it's another thing to go look at the hard segments and it's not doing well, but you're going to go lean into the people that are raising their hands saying, hey, I want this. I want to figure out how to do this. Maybe I'm not going to be making the most money immediately, but I see the longer term picture, whether that comes in, a big commission check down the line if you land 9 out of those 10 CIOs, or a promotion or recognition, whatever it is. I'm curious your take, as a leader, of large organizations, like what's your thought of those people that are raising their hands trying to do the hard stuff?
I love those kind of people. And honestly, when you do hard things, then later when you get an easier job, it's a lot easier. Like I went to college in San Diego and I lived on the beach for a while, and I'm a runner, and I used to love to run from my place in South Mission Beach up to Pacific Beach on the hard sand and then run back on the boardwalk, you know? And when you're running back, you feel like you're running like 4-minute miles, you know, because you're running so slow on the hard sand. And so, you know, you work somewhere hard, you take on a hard assignment, and you kick the you know what out of it. Then, you know, maybe you'll get lucky and you get to work for one of these white hot companies that's growing 100% a year. And while everyone's doing 150% of quota, you'll be doing 300% of quota because you ran in the hard sand. So I love people like that. I can't stand people that are like, this is hard.
Yeah.
The job's hard. I mean, I tell our team all the time, because like when we're reviewing deals, you know, I'm turning the screws on what's going on with these deals. I'm trying to find the problems in the deals. And that's my job, is to find out why they won't buy. What's the problem you know, when you're inspecting deals? But when you're the rep having your deal inspected, you feel like you're being like personally attacked. So I just always let everyone know, like, the reason why we pay commissions, and the reason why we pay sometimes handsome commissions, is because there's uncertainty in this work that we do. These deals are not going to close on their own. The customers are not buying on their own. The job is really, really hard, which is why it can be very, very lucrative. So if you want a job that's not hard, I don't have a role for you.
Love it.
Go listen to a different podcast if you want an easy job.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Frankie and I love the quote, don't wish it was easy or wish you were better, right? I think that's kind of the mentality you have to have, right? That like, all right, that's the big challenge. That's the hill I got to go climb. I'm going to climb it faster. I'm going to climb it better than anyone else.
Yeah, but I heard this. I heard a leader on a podcast years ago talking about that. Our industry is full of B and C players, and we kind of trade them all around. We just keep on, you know, they work somewhere for a year and a half, and they go somewhere else for a year and a half. They're all over the place. LinkedIn's full of millions of them. Finding the people that are full of grit and business acumen, and they're hungry and they can do hard things, those the A players that you want on your team.
So business acumen, you mentioned genuine curiosity, you mentioned intelligence. Give us your approach to business acumen and why that's important and how you kind of look for that or measure that.
Well, I think it's connected to my favorite quote that I've heard all time about sales is from Jack Welch, the once CEO of IBM, and he said, one thing we've discovered with certainty is that anything we do that makes the customer more successful inevitably results in a financial return for us. And at the end of the day, that is at the root of what I'm talking about when I talk about curiosity and business acumen, is like, how do I really deeply understand what is it that this customer is trying to accomplish? Because they, you know, when customers go out to bid or when they entertain vendors, they generally have a problem. They very often self-prescribe the solution to that problem, and then they go out to market either by just talking to vendors and getting proposals or more formally with an RFP, but they self-prescribe the solution. They're not always really good at self-prescribing the solution because, I mean, especially think about the world now, how fast everything's moving with AI. If you wrote an RFP a year ago for some AI solution, you probably wouldn't use that same RFP today because the world is changing so quickly. So if you have high degrees of business acumen, then you're not just looking at what are the features that they're looking for in their bid, but you're looking at what's the real business problem, the root business problem that they're trying to solve, and what is it I can do to help this person, this company, be more successful in cutting costs or driving growth or transforming their environment, whatever it is, but really deeply understanding that and figuring out how can I help them get a financial return, the one that they're going for. And I think that I was just on with one of my colleagues today who's thinking about making a switch from our services team to our sales team. One of those changes, and I said, you know, people think that selling, there's a lot of people that are very good communicators. They're extroverts, they're good communicators, and they get told early in their lives, like, you be good at sales, but these are talkers. And some of them are good at sales, but you all have heard the whole, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, you should be listening twice as much. The talkers, they got to learn that listening game real quick or they end up not being very successful. So this is a job that really is about listening more than it's about talking. And it's about being curious and asking lots of questions. And if you manage those relationships right, in the spirit of that Jack Welch quote, what I always tell my sellers is that you should be managing your customer relationships in a 4-to-1 relationship, 4-to-1 ratio, meaning if you talk to the customer 5 times, and this could be formal meetings, it could be in person, it could be a dinner, it could be a Zoom call, it could be a text, whatever, out of 5 communications that you have with your customer, you should be serving them 4 out of 5 times. 4 out of 5 times, whatever language you're using, whatever the topic is, it should be very clear to the customer that I'm here to help you be more successful. I'm not trying to sell you anything. And if you maintain that ratio, not 4 out of 5 times, but 40 out of 50 times and 400 out of 500 times, then you will differentiate yourself from all the other sellers that they've dealt with that are constantly trying to drive their own agenda, only call when they're trying to sell something, always have urgency when it's the end of the month, talk about where they are against their plan, I'm trying to make it to club. Your customers don't care about that. If you maintain that ratio of 4-to-1, then in the 1 out of 5 times that you do have something that you want to share with them that you think is going to help their business, they are going to listen. And they will maybe buy, even if it's not on their timeline or they didn't have a specific project to it, because they know, because you've proven to them over time that you're interested in their success, and you know that your success is going to be a byproduct of their success.
That's so good. Give us some examples of that. Like, are you, I don't know, sending them industry white papers? Are you sending them research? Are you saying, hey, I saw this person and I thought of you and this is how I might be able to help your business? Like, what are some specific examples?
Those are some examples of it. I think salespeople, it's also just not playing games. Like, salespeople play games. Most SaaS companies run monthly. If a seller says to me, if you don't do this deal, the month ends today, August ends today. If you don't do this deal today, it's like 50% more. We had a salesperson just tried this game on me. It was a $300,000 purchase, and they're like, if you don't buy it today, it's $450 on Monday. You know what I mean? Like, if it's $300K today, and you made the pricing contingent on an August close, if it's $300K today, I get if it's $310 or $320 or $325 on Monday, but you think it's going to go from $3 to $450 on Monday? You are never going to meet with me again. Never, ever, ever. We're not going to have a meeting again. It's just over.
You just
you're playing games
lose all
with me.
credibility.
Yeah. But
Mark, there's still time. Do you need to reschedule this so you can go respond to that? Like,
it's just an example. I'm not buying anything today. But I think when I talk to customers about this monthly thing, and I've been doing this for 18 years since I started at Salesforce. It's a lot of SaaS months I've been a part of. I just explained to them, like, hey, we're in a subscription business. We recognize revenue ratably. So, like, if we were to do a $1.2 million deal, we recognize revenue $100K per month. So I'm not playing any games with you on trying to encourage you to buy this month. It's that our business model demands it. So along with that, if you buy this month, that's great. If you buy next month, that's great. If you buy next year, that's great. If you buy 2 years from now, that's great. We're going to make you successful, and we're going to make you wildly successful, and hopefully you'll be on our product for a decade or more. But if you can do it, as long as it's not unnatural, we would like to incent you to try to do something this month. And that's like so much, that's disarming. It's not playing games, that pricing, if you don't do it today, all bets are off, we got to start over. It's like, well, then get lost,
Yeah.
But when I explain like why our business model benefits from you purchasing this month versus next month, then this arbitrary Friday to Monday thing, it actually does matter. And then they understand financially why it matters, and they're not disarmed. And every time I've taken a customer through that, I would say probably 75% of the time, they've gone and made the effort to get the deal done in that month.
And if you've done your 4 to 5 ratio ahead of that leading up to it,
you've already built up the trust.
They're going to be willing to do that versus if you're just been selling them the whole time and then all of a sudden there's this random deadline that makes no sense to them. So
yeah, and trust is the point you're making there. And I mean, listen, in February there'll be a whole bunch of sales kickoffs in SaaS companies, and in like 50% of them, someone will be up on stage talking about becoming a trusted advisor. Have you seen this before?
Yeah, more than 50% of the time too.
Yeah, like everyone's, and here's the thing: like when you're a vendor, aspiring to be a trusted advisor is a good thing. But listen, for me, I'm 55. If some 25-year-old says that they want to be a trusted advisor, to me, and I've been around the block a little bit, like you should aspire to it. But what is well within your control and well within your reach is establishing trust. And in that two-word, phrase, trusted advisor, trust is the important part. I probably don't need your advice, or maybe I do. I don't know. But just get the trust part right. And maybe over time you can get to the advice part. But just get the trust part and you're going to be good.
Yeah, trust is key. And one of the things that, as we've been going on the definition of elite seller, business acumen, the grit, one of the things that you mentioned during our prep was great sellers are market makers. Help us understand what you mean by that.
Yeah, well, I always make this like differentiation between pipe gen and demand creation. So, and I really see pipe generation as uncovering projects. So you're basically like prospecting throughout your account, your prospect, to try to find problems or projects that are aligned to your solution set. And then you're piping those deals and you're pursuing those deals. But what if those problems don't present themselves, or there are no projects that are aligned, no funded projects that are aligned with your solution set? Well, then you have to be a market maker and you have to create demand where it does not exist. And to create demand where it does not exist, you have to get access into the organization so you can do discovery, so you can uncover what their true business priorities are. And you can find a way, if you can align to those priorities by doing discovery, digging into what the core problems are, and then helping the customer understand how they may be able to solve those problems in a differentiated way by working with you. And that's how you create demand where it doesn't exist. In order to do so in today's world is harder than it used to be, because the customers are inundated with inbound, because every single company out there has Pardot or Eloqua or Marketo or whatever. Everyone has their marketing automation solution. Everyone's got outreach and sales loft. I mean, they're just getting crushed. And the other thing is that they've all been overserved at the SaaS table. So the average enterprise has over 200 SaaS applications now. So compared to when I was at Salesforce in 07 and 08 and getting organizations to buy their first SaaS application, now they just have way too many apps and they're getting bombarded. And so how do you actually create an environment where you can go do discovery and ask those questions that we taught you how to ask, what the right questions are in your enablement program? How do you even get the audience to be able to have those discovery question sessions so you can hopefully identify pain that's aligned with your solutions? And you only do that through trust, through getting referrals from existing customers or prior customers that switch companies. But it has to be that personal connection that allows you to have trust so that you can do discovery. And if you try to do discovery without having trust, it'll fail, miserably. At the start of my career, in like 94, I had a sales call with Elon Musk. He and I are about the same age. This is before PayPal, so this is before he was the Elon Musk that we know today. And he threw me out of his office because, like, we sat down in the conference room. I asked him a question about, why he wanted to buy this thing that I was selling. And he said, "You're not very good at your job, are you?" And he said, "This meeting's over." And like, we were on the sidewalk 30 seconds after the meeting started. I was 23 years old, 24 years old. I later found out I was doing discovery. I hadn't been trained on discovery yet. And I was doing discovery, asking like challenger type questions before I had established trust. I didn't have permission to do discovery. And I deserved to get thrown out on the sidewalk.
What would you have done differently?
I would have just listened and been curious and not asked pointed questions until I had established some rapport. I kind of came right out with what I thought were hard questions, and he didn't like it.
So like having a point of view on the business, like coming with a perspective and going from there.
Or just like back to that 4-to-1 thing. Like, I did not establish to him that I was there to help him.
We had an interesting, I was just on a call this morning with a prospect where I threw up hey, here's the research that we've done. Here's our point of view, Frankie, to your point on how I think we can help. And you could tell it was a large audience and they were like, "Look, guy, just get us to the demo. Just get us to the demo. Like, show us the product.
Yeah.
We don't want to answer your questions." And I think it's natural for sellers and people who, want to, establish that trust to just say, okay, let's go. Like, I don't want to make you uncomfortable. But I think what I tried to do was say, look, our goal here is a trusted partnership. We want to spend most of the time going into the product, but the best partnerships that we have are aligned pretty early on what are the massive business initiatives that this company is focused on, and how can we tie what we're talking about here to one of those. Because if we can't, it's probably not going to work out and we're all wasting each other's time, like if it's not that big of a deal. And so I think that light pushback, it gave us enough time to just ask a few more questions that uncovered the pain that we were all here to uncover. And so I think that's maybe an area, Frankie, like back to your point of how do you establish trust? It's that research, coming with a point of view, and then taking it a step further and having a little bit of a swagger, but just a little bit of confidence to push back gently on a customer to say, we're doing this for a reason.
Yeah, and I think those opening slide before the demo that we've all seen before about here's the problem that you're trying to solve, are we aligned here? I think people think that that's like a checkbox, did you do it or not? But there's real art to that work. When a seller shows up to a meeting with me and they're like, based on our research, we understand that you're the chief revenue officer at Box and you're trying to grow revenue and improve win rates. It's like, snore.
Wow,
it's not.
Where'd you get that intel?
Yeah, how'd you come up with that one, right? And I've had that slide put in front of me so many times. So it's a well-intended rep. They're trying to do that thing of mapping to top-level business initiatives, but they kind of miss the plot. So I think there's ways to do that where it lands, and there's ways to do it where it doesn't.
Well, one thing you said earlier, and I was kind of reading between the lines here, everybody wants the meeting with the CXO or the highest level VP. And yes, you should get there. But one thing that I think we miss a lot of times is like, yes, do your research, but also go meet with the people that maybe the CRO is going to listen to, or the CIO or chief data officer, whoever you're selling to. Go get that perspective and then be like, hey, Mark, I talked with Griffin, I talked with Frankie, I talked with Joe. Here's the things that they care about on your team. Here's where their gaps are. This is where I think we can help. Would love to hear your perspective. Because like you're probably going to find a new insight as a seller for that C-level or VP that they might not have actually thought about or seen. Like that's how you can go establish trust. And I think a lot of times we just want to get straight to the top, like get that introduction, get that perfect email, cold call, and like have that meeting. But I think you miss a big gap between doing the hard, 3, 4, 5, even 10 meetings before you get there. That's going to set you up for a lot more success.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And like the kind of executive summary thing, there's ways of doing that well and ways of not doing it well. I mean, I've had sailors reach out to me and they're like, hey, I spoke to, 3 reps in New York City office and here's what I understand their pains are. Like, I can't go buy every tool that every one of my reps wants.
Yeah.
We have 300 reps. I would have 3,000 SaaS applications if every vendor that reached out to me that talked to a box seller had a solution that they thought could help us. But I won't buy anything unless like the key people on my team want it, because I'm in meetings all the time. I'm not implementing anything. I don't have time to. So if we're going to bring a new tool in or something like that, there's some, depending on what the nature of the tool is, like there's people in our revenue operations team that would have to be on board. And I won't mention their names because then every seller out there will know who the people are. But
who are they?
There's a handful of people that I won't even take a meeting unless they think it's a good idea, because they're the ones that are going to be involved with onboarding this vendor, doing the implementation, managing the relationship on an ongoing basis. And they get all the feedback from our sellers on what's working, what's not working. So I'm going to like improve these things and sponsor them, but I'm not buying anything unless my team's on.
So I love that story with Elon Musk. I want to learn more about, the conference room you're in and how he tossed you out. But when you look at, back in the day, you're getting into sales and the sort of the selling environment back then versus today, what are some of the, big glaring differences? And would you say that it was easier back in the day, or is it easier now? What's tougher? What's easier? I would love your take on sort of the differences.
I mean, people in older generations love to talk about how easy younger generations have everything, it's a very different selling environment now than when I started over 30 years ago. And I actually think it's better in a lot of ways, and it's harder in others. What is better about this career now, and I think I shared this thought with you when we met before, but I really think that the environment that we're in now, I've referred to as a renaissance of sales. This career has never been higher profile. It's never been more professional. It's never been more respected than it is right now at this moment. When I graduated from college in 1993, I did this research during a sabbatical. In 1993, when I graduated from college, the Harvard Business School's syllabus in the business school did not have one single class in it with the word sales in it. Not one. And as we know, sales is pretty darn important in an enterprise. Lots of classes on marketing, lots of classes on accounting, lots of classes on human resources and change management. Nothing on sales. And when I started at Salesforce in 2007, pretty much much later than that, Harvard Business School, not one class on sales. Today at the Harvard Business School, you could take a class on high-tech sales that's taught by a guy like me. Because
Crazy.
the career is much more professional. You know, we have career pathing with SDRs and OBRs and SMB and mid-market. You have career paths. All SaaS companies, you know, for example, have like basically the same career progression path. And importantly, because of the advent of the internet, and if you read the Challenger sale, the customers are more well-informed. They make up their mind 80% of the way before they show up at your digital doorstep, which means that if they have prescribed a solution to their problem per the earlier conversation that's not well aligned with your solutions, you have a really hard job that you have to get them to reconsider the way they prescribe their problem, to reconsider the core problem itself, to reconsider the solution. That's a way more sophisticated job than let me take you out to a steak dinner and let's play some golf and we're going to become bros and you're going to buy from me. You know, it's so the job, and so that means, you know, when I got out of college, I went to San Diego State, which was not a very well-respected school then. Now you need grades to go there.
Come on.
Yeah. Well, now when I got there, you had to be able to fog a butter knife to get in. Now I've heard of kids with like 3/8 that don't get in. But when I got into sales, it was just like state school people like me that got into sales. And now, you know, we hire kids from the best universities on earth. You know, I have people on the team from Stanford and people on the team from Harvard. 3 decades ago, 0 graduates from those universities were even considering a career in sales. So first of all, it's just a different, like you have to have the executive presence of a CEO. You have to have the strategic insights of a McKinsey partner. You have to have some technical aptitude. You have to be able to negotiate like a law firm partner. It's a really well-rounded career. And, you know, my friends that are of my age that, you know, used to make fun of me for being a salesman in the 90s because they were in commercial real estate or finance, not finance, but finance.
Yeah.
Finance.
People, you know, now they're asking if I can get their kids who are coming out of college an SDR job at Box, or do I still know someone at Salesforce? So it's a respected career. It's just different. Now, where it's harder, and I think a lot harder, is that the customers are really well informed, you know, and they're getting bombarded. There was a moment about 10 or 15 years ago where I was like, man, today's sellers, they've got it really easy because we all have these big lead gen teams. We've got armies of SDRs, all these inbound leads, but that's really changed now with this, you know, average enterprise of 200 SaaS apps. It's a much more competitive market. The customers are really well informed and they're bombarded by way too much inbound. So it's super hard. I think it's hard to build pipeline unless, you know, you're in a really hot market where it's coming to you, but it's a hard job now. It's a way more sophisticated job. It's a more respected job, but it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, with that said, you can't say Box, Mark, but any other company or industry, like what kind of excites you right now knowing like sales is a harder, more sophisticated job? Like any thoughts around like industry or specific company that you'd encourage people to check out?
Well, I mean, everything that's going on in AI is incredibly exciting. And one thing I know with over 3 decades in the tech industry is that we really are good at speaking in superlatives. You know, like when the internet came, it was the biggest thing we'd ever seen. And the SaaS revolution came, it was the biggest thing we'd ever seen. And the mobile revolution came, it was the biggest thing we've ever seen. And guess what? The AI revolution is the biggest thing we've ever seen. This time I think it actually is. Like if you just look at the amount of money that's being invested in R&D, just the major LLM providers themselves were up at like $500 billion, I think, a year or something crazy. So it really is a pretty incredible thing, and it's all over the place. And like what's really different is if you just take like the Fortune 500. What percentage of Fortune 500 companies do you think are evaluating AI tech or are in a POC or in production?
100%.
That was not the case with mobile. That was not the case with SaaS. That was not the case with the internet itself. Like in the year 2000, I was calling on Fortune 500 companies, and CEOs were still having their emails printed out by their assistants. And they would say, we're not doing anything on the internet. We're not a B2C company. We're not worried about Amazon. The only thing a website is for us is directions to our headquarters. And that was like in 1999 and 2000, like well into the internet revolution. The AI thing, I mean, we're coming up on the 3-year anniversary of the ChatGPT moment. I had dinners with 15 CIOs in January, 2 months after ChatGPT came out. Raise your hand if you've played with ChatGPT. All the hands go up.
Yeah.
No technology in my 32-year career has ever had that kind of broad-based interest. So, you know, we're deep in the AI world at Box, but I mean, if I were to work anywhere else, it would definitely be a leader in the AI world.
Yeah, one of my biggest prospects at the company I'm at, one of the largest banks in the world, just in 2025, they have $18 billion, and this is public, $18 billion budget set aside for AI projects.
18 billion.
It's insane.
I mean,
for
what's
one
your
year.
quota? Your quota, you just need like 0.00 some
Just give me a
percentage
one
of that.
I'll just take a few million, like no big deal.
Yeah, they won't even notice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, people are they're putting a lot of wood behind the arrow. And well, because the returns that they're getting on these really high value use cases are incredible. I mean, we have customers that are lighting up use cases using Box AI that are creating humongous savings for them.
So is there anything else that we have not covered that you feel like sellers can either possess or work on to help stand out in today's selling environment? We talked about curiosity, business acumen, grit, intelligence. Buyers are more educated. They've got more at their fingertips, but I'm curious if there's anything else that we haven't covered that you recommend that you've seen or
I mean, I would say
advice for sellers.
One great thing that everyone can do is develop a mentor or two mentors. And mentors have been a really important part of my success. The mistake that a lot of sellers make is they'll go to like a sales leader that's a couple clicks above them and they'll be like, hey, I want you to be my mentor. And sometimes what they're really trying to do is like, how do I fast track a promotion? You know what I mean? Let me cozy up with someone a couple clicks up so that they know me and I can get promoted. And that does work. Like it can help. But what I mean by mentor is like developing a mentor relationship with someone outside of your company. And basically when I've made this ask of people, I'll make the ask and I'll say, I've watched your career fondly. I would like to have a career like yours. Would you be open to being a mentor? And here's what that relationship would look like. I would like to meet with you this number of times per year. I will show up with an agenda for this amount of time per meeting, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour. I will not waste your time. Would you be open to that? And when you give it some structure and you make it clear you're not going to waste their time and you're going to show up prepared, then they almost always say yes because no one ever asks them that way. No one. And then you end up, you'll be able to go to someone and be like, I'm having this problem with my boss, or I feel like my territories, I don't know if I can be successful here, or you're having those feelings like you might want to leave the company or whatever. You have someone that you can bounce these ideas off that doesn't work at your company and they're not trying to hire you. They're only there to give you good advice. And they do get some, it's a very rewarding thing to do, to be a mentor. Like I've done it with countless people and just because they asked.
Yeah. I think I love that idea about not just like going a couple lines above, because at the end of the day, like they're still going to be looking at you about quota and different things like that. So having somebody that you can have those honest conversations with and then not wasting the time. I remember having mentors growing up, or not growing up, but like early in my career and now being on the other side of it. I have a couple people that I mentor, and it's probably one of the most rewarding things you can do. So people are definitely willing to lean into that. Mark, this has been such an awesome episode. I'm curious, any specific resources, whether it's books, other podcasts, anything that people should be looking into around the topic of standing out for your buyers, AI, anything that we've talked about today?
I haven't read any of the modern books on AI. It's just moving so fast. I think there's podcasts that are better. There's like weekly podcasts that are going to be better than any book. By the time you get something to print, it's going to be pretty outdated. But just in terms of like having a long-lasting and fruitful sales career, I don't know if you can do any better than reading Angela Duckworth's Grit. Secondly, if you're in sales leadership, I don't think there's a better book about leadership than one called John Wooden. It's one called Wooden on Leadership. I've read every book about John Wooden. That's the best one. Those two books will take you a long way.
Awesome.
I love it.
Mark, this is so good. Go ahead.
This has been great. I don't want it to end. Well, final.
Yeah.
I was going to say, we got a lot of listeners earlier in their career that are listening and tuning into the podcast. Is there anything that we haven't covered? It could be an advice to your younger self. It could be to some of the earlier folks in their career. Any other advice that we haven't covered that you want to make sure you share?
I think for people early in their career, and boy, I wish I knew this at that stage. It's a quote that I think is often attributed to Bill Gates. I haven't ever verified if he said it, but the quote is, people overestimate what they can do in a year and they underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And I know when I was 22, 23, 24, 25, I was not thinking about what I was going to be doing at 32, 33, 34, 35. But when you think it longer, like if you're 25, go find someone that's 35, that's in a role that you want. And then go ask for time with them and find out about what are the skills that they have to be successful in that role. And then go look in the mirror and figure out what your gaps are. And then go fill in those gaps. Instead of like, hey, can I meet with you because I want to get promoted next year? Which is how most of us, that's how I was wired. How do I get promoted next year? How do I get promoted again the next year? How do I get promoted again the year after that? But not really thinking about what do I want in 10 years? And that actually is probably where you can find the most career growth, is by doing that skill gap analysis between where am I now and where do I want to be in 10. And then those one-year promotions will accelerate.
Yeah. Play the long-term game, whether it's with yourself, your buyers, your career, the people you work with, developing skills. So such a good point. Mark, thanks for jumping on today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, we'll see ya.